David, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Here we are again. Same clothes, different time. But I just picked up on, and we've decided that we'll have these topics where we get into things like pay and value and morality and different topics. And then we're going to pick up on the stuff that's in the news and we've just come across it. And I think we've just kind of got this, the did you see element of
Yes.
of these episodes, and we'll intersperse the topics with the did you sees, which I'm already finding that hilarious, and I don't know if anybody else will. But so, did you see the Boris Johnson remote working won't be the new normal?
Yeah, I saw that. It was in the Times, wasn't it? And I think he's not a sound witness on this. I think two things. One is, any prediction about the future is making yourself a hostage to fortune. If you think about the derivation of the word, if you're making a prediction, you're saying it before the event. You must therefore be having some ideas in your head before the event. And there's a special word for that. It's called prejudice, prejudgment. And I do believe that the future is essentially unknowable. So I don't think that the dear Prime Minister, whatever else he's good at, I don't think he's going to be any more wise about predicting the future than anybody else. But I also think he's an unreliable witness in the sense that, and I'm not getting at him when I say, he's got some motives here, hasn't he? He'd like to see property values stay up. He'd like to see city centres regenerated. He'd like to see, people back in offices so that cities can thrive and so on. So I do believe that it's not entirely a neutral or even well-informed judgment, but I understand where it's coming from, I think.
Well, when I saw it, I almost, as we were chatting, I was thinking, what are we going to put on these did you see moments? And I think it's the stuff that makes us go, ooh, or it's just, which isn't science at its finest, but it's just our reaction to what somebody's done or said. And I did, picking up on what you said, I just thought, well, you've either got a motive, that is your own, or you've got a motivation which has been given to you, and I'm not quite sure which one it is. But that sense of when you're in that leadership role, making statements that are absolutes is a very dangerous thing unless you hold the cards or you've got the data set or you just know, listen, this is what we're going to do, right? I'm in charge. But to predict a future is very interesting. And I almost felt that lack of confidence or that leadership quality of being able for him to go, be interesting to see how this pans out.
Yes, that's right.
Won't it?
Yeah, one of the burdens of leadership, I think, is that people look to you to have special insight, special wisdom, and it's awful to have to say, well, actually, I haven't got anything on this one. I've noticed that since becoming a professor, people look to me to have knowledge that I absolutely don't have. They say, oh, Professor, tell me, what do you think is going to happen about such and such? And I want to say, I haven't bloody clue, really, but I find myself seduced into giving an opinion, and I think that the Prime Minister may well be in that position on this one. But I can see most people would want to see city centres thriving still. It's awful when the soul goes out of a city centre, and we've all been to cities where the inner bit is dying. And they seem soulless places. They seem depressing places. They can even be dangerous places, of course, because the people who are there are not always kind of up to good. They're up to no good, potentially. And I've certainly seen the decay of cities in America. Detroit for a while was a dangerous place as the car plants sort of started to die, as some of the steelworks in the Rust Belt of the states. And of course, one of the reasons that the population got behind Trump was because they could see their cities dying, because the old industries were dying. And I think that any prime minister worth his salt wouldn't want that to happen to UK cities. And so I think that, I understand where he's coming from, but is it the case that people are going to flood back to the office? My own view, which so what do I know? But my own view is that I think we're going to end up in a hybrid situation.
Yeah.
I think that there will be people who choose to work from home. There'll be people who choose to work in the office. There'll be some people who like the choice. And my own view about quality of life is that the more salient choices you can make, the more your quality of life increases. So if I have the choice about where I work, the chances are I'm going to be happier wherever it is I choose to work. And it may be that I don't have to make the same choice consistently. So maybe that on a Tuesday I'd like to work at home, and on a Wednesday I'd like to be in the office. And I suspect that that hybrid approach is going to be the norm, is going to be the new norm.
Yeah, and I felt that, and I just thought there are going to be some organisations that have maybe struggled to make this work, but have got by and are eager to get people back in the office. And then there's going to be, you know, if you pick up the stick, you get both ends, right? And so there's going to be another group of organisations at the other, which are going, holy schmoly, who knew? You know, this is working fantastically.
I tell you, I've been doing some webcasts for the business school recently, and on them we've been running some polls. And the one I did just last week asked people about their motivation and morale working from home. And it was a very simple rating scale. We simply went from it's gone up a lot, it's gone up a bit, it hasn't changed, it's gone down a bit, it's gone down a lot. You know, really complex ratings. But what was interesting is that, you know, we had a good population from all over the country and some international people joining us. But what was interesting, we had a goodly number. But what was interesting is that the consensus was that motivation and morale had gone down. But about 20% had said it had gone up a bit. No one had said it had gone up a lot. And 3 times as many people said it had gone down, either a bit or a lot, than had gone up a bit. Yeah. So 3 to 1 down. And when we started to probe as to why, they missed the camaraderie, they missed the banter, but work-related, they missed the spontaneous conversations, which were often the provocation or the spark of creativity. And so I can imagine that in certain industries, people will flood back to the office as fast as they can. And the guy who runs Goldman Sachs was saying, you know, people are going to come back to the office and we're going to encourage them back into the office. And so there's going to be a kind of real pull into the center again. But I can imagine that there'll be other people, if you largely spend your time writing reports or doing research or whatever, it's perfectly possible to do that on your own and to pop into the office only occasionally. So I think that there'll be an effect brought about by the nature of the work, and there'll be an effect brought about by the nature of the individual. But I suspect that hybrid is going to be the way forward.
I think also just people's personal circumstances.
Yep.
There are people that have an office space, and then there are people that don't. And in fact, the entire quality of their partner relationships are based on the fact that the two of us used to go to work and then come back and see each other at night. And if we're with each other all day, for the love of all things sacred, it's got nothing to do with my job. We just don't need to be together all day.
Absolutely. In fact, my dear friend Ron Ellington, who used to run British Airways, I chatted to him the other day, and he said, I will always go to work, he said, because I married my wife for life, but not for lunch.
There you go. That's perfect. And vice versa. You know, I married my husband for life, not for lunch. It's a perfect analogy.
He's always got a bon mot, has Rod, but you know, but there's an essence of truth. There's an element of truth in that the idea of creating the kind of pulse of the day of going out and coming back, you know, and that distinguishes, in a sense, weekends from weekdays. And incidentally, a lot of the evidence I've been looking at in terms of maintaining your sanity, motivation, morale, and so on, is having some sort of regular pulse. And there are several cycles of that. There's a daily pulse. There's a weekly pulse, and there might even be, you know, a kind of annual pulse as well. So the idea of an annual holiday or whatever it may be gives you a different pulse again. But that's really quite important for your sanity and well-being. So I suspect that need will always find some manifestation somewhere, somehow.
And I think because it's so new, what I've noticed is that people will say in the same breath, because of doing the same as yourself, but without a survey and just chatting, I've noticed that people say, I love, for example, being able to nip to the post office or run out and do something or put the wash on or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that means then, I might work a little bit later, or I might go, I'll do that at the weekend, because the line of 9 till 5 is disappeared. And then, of course, back to my pick up the stick, you get both ends. The other end of that then is, but then there's more of a blur. Where does my work life begin? And where is my space? And so we haven't got used to, because it's so new. We haven't quite figured out, for a lot of people, actually, my identity was quite clear. That was work, and this is home. In this new concept, they're much more amorphous, and I'm not sure where that divide is. So that's given some people, regardless of maybe having to homeschool kids on top of, all that stuff, that uncertainty, back to your point, that pulse, where am I me and where am I not? It's very interesting, I think.
Yes, almost if you by putting on your uniform or your suit or whatever it may be, you take on a persona and go somewhere else to do different kinds of things, and then you come home and you revert to a different version of yourself. It's not as if obviously you're not two different people, but you access different aspects of yourself, and that keeps the repertoire, the range, kind of nice and wide, and as if you can kind of experience a whole person with these multifaceted manifestations. I think that's quite important. Although, interestingly, I think that if we want to take our responsibilities to the planet seriously, we really do have to think quite hard about the things we're prepared to travel to do, and that we say that that's worth it. Because an awful lot of time, the price that's being paid is not necessarily by us, but by others, by the planet itself, by the community that we're in, and so on. And I think that that's a consideration that we can't ignore completely. So, for example, I'm a psychologist, as you know, and for a great deal of my career, I spent a lot of time doing psychological assessments of executives. And it used to be the norm, absolutely, say 15 years ago, in which wherever the executive was that we were going to assess, we would travel to them. And if that was the States, or if it was Australia, or if it was, Paris or whatever, I would go. I would get on a plane, I would go, I would sit in front of them, and I would assess them. Now we wouldn't dream of doing that. We do it all entirely through this kind of medium. We do it by Zoom. And, if I have to say, what am I sacrificing by not physically being there? Well, the answer is a bit of certainty, a few cues, a few clues as to that person. But if you ask good, better questions and listen really carefully, you can still make the judgments that you need to make the assessments. And I haven't noticed much of a decrement that losing all of that travel and the impact on the ozone layer has benefited from. So I think that the idea of being able to create a hybrid so that we travel when we need to and we don't when we don't is good for lots of things.
I agree with that. And I've noticed straight away, I've got one client who literally has postponed and postponed and postponed a intervention with the intent that we get together face to face. And another client that said, well, let's do one over, this sort of format. And we've all looked at each other and gone, well, that went brilliantly. and we've cracked on. So what I have really become aware of is that this situation has familiarized people with the medium, and so maybe their discomfort or their lack of willingness to participate is gone. So the capacity to have people at ease in this medium has been forced upon them, and now we've habitualized to it. And that I couldn't have done that by myself, but the world globally has done it. So that's definitely changed the dynamic.
It's not a qualitative shift, it's an acceleration of a shift that had started already. And I think that's understandable, maybe even inevitable, but the great advantage of being forced to do something for an extended period of time, which lockdown has created for us, we had no choice, most of us, but to work from home, is that it's made us genuinely explore the experiment of what it feels and sounds and acts like when you're made to do it. And this experiment has been going on now for over a year. So we're all fully immersed in it. And I think we can all be quite articulate about the aspects that suit us and the aspects that don't. And we can then be part of shaping what the new normal looks like. And it may well vary, as I say, by industry, but by individual even, and by team.
Yes.
I mean, an awful lot of industries have had to get used to working internationally in virtual teams all over the world for a while. But now it's an unremarkable thing, because whether you're in the next town or in the next street or in the next continent, it makes no difference. You're still here. Yeah.
I think that phrase, an unremarkable thing is great. I mean, my phone rang the other day and somebody went, I thought I'd speak to you the old fashioned way. I was like, good God, when did that happen? It's happened so quickly that I had a phone call. Wow. And
yes, I know. You're telling people about it.
I had a phone call.
How was that?
Exactly. And I think that's why when I look at the remote working with the new normal, says Boris Johnson, I mean, almost God bless him, it's maybe he thinks it's his job. He's got to say, come on, everybody, let's get the show back on the road. But the reality is, the thing that made me go, was if everything that we've said is true, it's such a buffet of variables that actually it's not so much, remote working probably won't be the new normal. It'll be part of the new normal.
That's it.
And maybe he should have said that, right?
Absolutely. And so therefore, again, you're making the case for the hybrid, and I think that's right. But what I was going to say is that I recently finished a book in which I was taking a sort of a sideways look at work-life balance, and we can talk about that another time. But part of it was one of the chapters was a chapter on the future of work, and one of the best studies I came across there was actually conducted by an American consulting company called Citrix, and what they had done is a massive consensus validation study. They'd gone out to literally hundreds and hundreds of people who had reasonable access to reasonable information about these things, asking them about the future of work. And it came down to two critical variables. One is, will technology enhance or replace human beings? And the other variable was, will the workplace be a place or simply a platform for sharing? So they came up with a 2x2. Yeah. What was interesting about that was that there were people advocating all four of those scenarios. My own view, having read it, was that I could see a sequence emerging in which the first step is for technology to enhance what we do and for workplaces to stay the same. But the last step of the four would be technology replacing an awful lot of people and platforms being the way forward rather than formal organizations. But the point is that all of that is conjecture. We don't know. But what we do know in the very near term is that some of us have developed an appetite and some have developed an absolute abhorrence of working from home. So I suspect that people will react according to those feelings first. But I'm reminded that several decades ago, far more than I'm comfortable telling you, I was doing my doctorate in Oxford, and one of my colleagues was doing a doctorate on video conferencing, and he was full of reasons why it wasn't likely to be very successful. I'm reminded also of when I once went on to Radio 4 on a program called Medicine Now, and I was chatting to the presenter before we started the recording. And I said, what did you do before you did this? And he said, well, I did a PhD on the use of lasers in surgery. I said, well, why aren't you doing that now? He said, well, because I came to the conclusion that it would never work.
There it is, isn't it?
so he's now on Radio 4 presenting a show. But the point is that these predictions have a habit of biting us in the bum, because no one's got a monopoly on wisdom on these things. But my prediction, making myself a hostage to fortune, is that hybrid is the way forward, because people exercise choice.
I definitely buy into that. I think, and that's not you offering or me offering percentages.
No,
that's just saying actually any organization that I think is looking to a flexibility and a fluidity won't even identify itself as, oh no, we're an in the office organization, or we're a work from home organization. We are what's best for the role that you're in and the way that you've got a working organization.
Absolutely. The idea, in fact, that I kind of want to encourage people to move beyond is the idea of going back to anything. Let's not go back. Let's go forward to. So let's go back to the old normal or worry about the new normal. But let's argue. What do we want the world to be like, and can't we make it like that? Yeah. And I'm really addicted to that way of thinking. How do we want it to be? Well, let's make it. See if we can make it a bit more like that. And therefore the challenge for us, if you think about change programs, you're a coach, and I know you work as a consultant, and I've done the same for a long time as well. Quite frequently, when you're thinking about organizational change, the problem is that it's as if the status quo has got anchor chains tied around it, and it's been bolted to the floor so that no one can move anything. And so the first thing you've got to do is to break those chains, or at least loosen the bonds that hold the status quo in place. Well, the beauty of what we've been through is that those chains have been broken, or at least they've been loosened. So we've got the most wonderful opportunity to create some change, because there's less holding the status quo in place. So in a sense, the idea of not wasting a good crisis comes back to mind. This has been a crisis which has enforced some change. As we think about the future, we've now got more opportunity to create change than we had before the pandemic arose.
Yeah, and I think that really resonates with me. It's let's not think in absolutes, and I think that's what made us both go ooh was the topics as broad as we want to think about it, but in that role, talking with a certainty is almost indicative of, well, if you're half as intelligent as you need to be in a role like that, that the variables are too massive for even you to make that statement, and yet you've probably felt that you've got to make that statement to kind of kickstart things. But I may have liked a braver kind of application of let's kickstart, let's see where this goes. There's a lot of change that's going to happen. There isn't a new normal. There's a normal we're about to establish. Let's go into that future together. Let's be brave. Yeah, that would have actually been much more motivational, rather than half the people going, can't wait to go back, and the other half going, oh my God, I don't want to go back. Because you automatically alienate the people that don't want to. So that's maybe what I think in all the things we've said. Good leadership in any organization is going, well, we don't know yet. Let's go. Let's see where this road takes us. And that would have been a much more empowering. Back to your point about talking in absolutes. Also, but the leaders needing to offer certainty, the certainty of change, the certainty of a new path. Yeah, that's confidence giving. That makes me excited.
Yeah, I mean, another way of answering that would have been to say, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody does. Even if they claim to, they don't. But what I have confidence in is the creativity of the British people, that, the fact that we're a nation that works pretty hard, we're decent folks, we're likely to look after each other well. These are the things I believe in. And so wherever it takes us, the future is likely to be positive for us. That's what I believe.
And, as we just on this topic as well, I love that phrase that if you were going to take something away from this, don't talk in absolutes for sure. But this is what I have confidence in. Is a great way of framing, and I love that you said that. I think there's a lovely way of saying, I can't see the future, but that's maybe like being a captain of a boat that says, look, I don't know the seas that we're going to sail into, but what I have got confidence in is us as a team, the boat, our motivations. That I do have confidence in. So let's see where we go, right? And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So this idea that, you know, I have absolutely confidence that we can cope. You know, we are that kind of inventive, creative, hardworking, intelligent people, and we will find the best way forward. And I don't know what it'll be, but that's okay.
Yeah, and I can believe in that. Yeah. Okay, well, David, you know, that was our our reaction to did you see Boris saying that remote working won't be the new normal? So, you know, from my perspective, I think these are great little reaction pieces. I hope people start to enjoy them, because again, we're not necessarily giving answers, but it's that, you know, the reflections, the what you could think about, and you know, just some perspective. So on that note, we'll see what the next topic and the next Did You See is, and I will see you soon, sir.
See you soon.